Okay, we're on the Brooklands members stand and got a few cars on here, and one of them is this absolutely beautiful Delage. And we're going to have a chat with the owner, Martin. Hi there, Martin.
Yes, sir.
Hello. How are you?
Fine.
Fantastic. We've got a Delage, I can see, but tell us a little bit more about the car.
This is a 1923 Delage DI. So there were three versions of this model: the DI Sport, and the DI Super Sport. This was the first of that series. Engine number 10. So those people who know about these things seem to think that this is a very, very early version of the DI, the first of the Delage cars to ever be overhead valve. And so to continue, we have overhead valve engine of 2.1 litres, 4-cylinder, 5-bearing crank, a fully pressurised oil system, delivery system as distinct from splash or whatever. There is a cartridge filter on the crankcase, and in order for the oil to reach the rearmost rocker, it is delivered first to the rear main bearing of the crankshaft and travels along the crankshaft through the big ends, through the mains, through the big ends, through the mains, and up, and out into the starter mechanism here, and then up to the pedestal for the up to the pedestal for the rockers, and runs right along the rocker shaft to the rearmost rocker. So if you see oil at the rearmost rocker, you know that it's travelled all the way up.
It's actually working well at that point.
It's working well.
Fantastic.
It has the famous dyno start, which is basically a series wound starter motor, and it has within it what's called a shunt winding to act as a dynamo. So when you start the car, the series wound motor turns the engine over via an inverted chain to the crankshaft. The minute the engine fires, the same chain drives the same dyno start now as a dynamo.
Okay.
Producing a maximum, if you're lucky, of 8 amps.
Right.
Which is not a lot. In fact, it's negligible, but it's something rather than nothing.
Okay, what year is this?
1923, so 99 years old.
Quite advanced technology, yes, for 1923 then?
Very advanced. And in addition to all of that, we have four-wheel braking, the famous Perot braking shaft here, as found in Bentleys, in Lagondas of the period. So Henri Perot was a Frenchman who lived here in UK, mainly Scotland, and this was his invention, adopted by the most if you will, the most advanced motor car manufacturers of the day. The front wheels are compensated one with the other, and the back wheels are compensated one with the other.
Right.
The handbrake operates the same mechanism as the foot brake. So when you pull on the handbrake, all four brakes go on.
So they all
has a multi-plate dry clutch, and it has a 4-speed straight cut gearbox.
Right.
What
sort of performance do we get out of that?
It accelerates with a glacial speed, because it was never intended to be anything other than a car probably with a 4 or 6 light saloon body on the top. This, in the style of Kelch, of the carrosserie of Paris, may well have been a later body.
Right.
And was very, very fashionable in the early 20s. And it's a French idea, but you will see it on some Rolls and some Bentley cars.
Okay,
so you have.
Let's just have a walk up there and have a quick look at that.
So you have the teak door cappings,
right,
and the teak decking, and then the faux boat shape
and a boat tail
at the rear. This is purely a folly. This is purely a fashion thing, and you have to sort of try and get your head round the times and what was going on. So there had been a war, there had been a flu pandemic, and the kind of person who bought this probably a young man of a private income, had survived all of the above, and was going to have a damn good time driving around down to the harbour, down to the club, bit of tennis, pretty girl, di-da. So it was not in any way, shape or form anything other than just a bit of fun. It was not to take the daughter to tap or go down to Sainsbury's for click and collect.
You're almost describing it as a bit of a fashion accessory.
It was very much as possibly was the girl in the front seat.
Right,
and so yes, it was, but it was at the same time, and as well as the sort of car a young man might buy, because he identified with the racing success of people like Delage, who was winning races here at Brooklands, and he would, like a modern young man who would want to buy a Ferrari or McLaren to identify with the racing car team that he supports, Mercedes, whatever.
This would be the same.
This was the same sort of thing. It was he was saying to the world, "I am a supporter of Delage racing, etc., etc."
Let's wander over there.
At the same time,
they're trying to sell memberships.
It was the bread and butter for the racing. So Delage was making the chassis, you understand, and people put their own body on. And this was subsidizing the racing, which was incredibly expensive. Straight 8, 1.5 roller bearing engines in those racing cars. Very, very expensive indeed. So this subsidized that sort of that aspect of the company's work. Yes.
Obviously the racing was heightening the profile of
Delage
anyway.
Absolutely.
Yes. So they probably didn't have too much trouble selling cars like
No,
this.
I don't think so. They made more of this model than any other. Of course, the history of Delage is fairly well known. By the late 20s, it was already getting difficult. By October 29, you had the Great Depression. The money was starting to run out. The sales were not there. And by 1934, Delage had been absorbed by Delage, example of which can be found here in the Jackson set as well. So it was a short-lived, period, but the engineering in this car reflects the engineering in the racing cars. Very sophisticated, very advanced. There's a nice little feature I might show you, which is amuses people no end. So we have here the 4-speed box, and you will see it has number 10 on because it's a matching box and engine numbers. So 2, 4, 3, 1 and AR, arrière, reverse.
All right.
Arrière back.
Okay.
So on this, the early model of the DI series, 1923, when you go to first, you go from, where am I? Neutral, forward, that's now in first. To go into reverse, you must lift the ball up. There's a détente, and you go further forward, and you're now in reverse.
Oh, wow.
Which is fine, because the détente prevents any accidentally
pushing in.
Exactement.
Yeah.
But Delage, in what he was, I don't know, for whatever reason, on the later model, which was called the DIS, with a slightly better breathing engine, removed the détente. So a young man, possibly showing off, who hasn't, engages what he believes to be first gear, gives the engine some beans, drops the clutch, and goes straight backwards to the consternation of all concerned. I had no idea why they did that, but apparently...
it's a strange setup, isn't it? Keeps them on their toes.
And note also that the pedal arrangement is as per a modern clutch, brake, throttle. Bentley, Citroën, and many, many other manufacturers experimented with putting the throttle betwixt and between the clutch and the brake. On this, you're driving it just as you would drive your modern. It just doesn't...
Makes it easier?
Makes it easier, absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely.
So when a BMW pulls out in front of you, and it's always a BMW, you immediately hit the brake because that's the natural thing to do.
Instead of the accelerator.
Nothing against BMWs at all. No.
Brilliant. Okay, thanks very much for showing us around
All right.
there, Martin.
Pleasure, sir.
Been
Pleasure.
lovely. Thank you.